is this happening?
Yeah. Can you get real passionate for a moment?
I can, but it would be really loud.
Okay. Well, how passionate do you think you might get?
Whilst we're talking?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the passion I'll get.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I'm guessing we're in.
Yeah, sure we're in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Talking Pictures with Max and Tawana. That's Max. Oh, is it my name first?
Yeah.
Okay, I forgot. Welcome back to Talking Pictures with Tawana and Max.
It's something about the flow, like Max and Tawana. Tawana and Max.
Are we in?
Yeah,
We're back in?
I'll cut around that, yeah.
Welcome back to Talking Pictures with Tawana and Max.
Hey.
We had to do a double take.
Yeah.
I know I'm a little bit off, but oh my god. Are we in?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay, you're probably hearing Max say we're back. Oh god.
There's always something, man. Fourth time's a charm.
Okay. Welcome back to Talking Pictures. It's Tawana and Max.
I'm Max, that's Tawana.
Oh god. How many times have we tried to stop this? 4 times.
Four times. 4 takes
4
of that
times.
opening line.
I hope you take that out. You can keep it. I do hope you take it out. Oh god. I hope everyone's good. Hope you're well.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I don't know if the world's crazy. I don't even know what's going on in the world. Me and Max have just been talking about there's just been a leak in the States because we got snitches. Yeah, I'm still on the side of snitches. You know, can't snitch.
But it's not snitching.
Either way, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Kramer versus Kramer.
Yeah.
Now, this is my pick. I wasn't thinking about this. It took me a few days to think about what I was going to pick. I was initially thinking about Terminator.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know whether to go Terminator 1 or Terminator 2. And then I was thinking about an animated film because you wanted to go with Mulan, but then you changed your mind. And I was like, maybe I should pick Mulan because it's been a while since I've watched it.
Yeah.
Then when I was meditating, literally 5 minutes before I told you, it just sort of came to me. I was like, Kramer vs. Kramer. I was like, oh, good. And then when I was watching it, I sort of realized this is a great film to talk about because we're both children of separation.
Children of broken homes. Woo-woo!
I don't think that's something to worry about. Woo! I mean, we survived.
Yeah.
We survived. Oh my god, what's the kid in the film called?
The kid's name is... Oh, fuck. Billy.
Billy, yeah. I hope Billy survived. How old would Billy be? He would be in his 40s. 50s.
50s by now,
50s. Yeah. My god. That's how old this film is. Came out in 1979? I think. 1979, 1970... Yeah, 1979.
79.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Okay, I had not seen this movie before.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm of 2 minds about it because there's a lot of things about it that I really, really love. And it really hit me as a child of, you know, we'll get into all that stuff.
Did he touch a nerve?
It didn't touch a nerve. Well, actually, yes, some things did touch a nerve. And some things, like, it's like in Ratatouille when he's eating the meal at the end and it flashes back to his childhood. And there's moments of that of just like, oh, and the you know, the 5-year-old in me somehow came out again. So yeah, there's things about it that I really, really love. And then there's other things about it that I don't like. It either didn't work on me, or it actively irked me, or it just sort of threw me through a loop.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. We can. I'm happy to dive into any of that. We can go through some of the plot, or I can just get out with some of these things.
Yeah, get them out. Get them out.
Okay. It's a lot to do with the direction, and specifically the editing of this movie. The script is phenomenal. The script is
fucking phenomenal.
amazing. One of the best scripts I've ever seen, I think.
It's adapted from a book.
Yes, Avery Corman's book, Kramer versus Kramer. I've not read it. I don't know how much they changed for the movie, but I might want to give it a read at some point. So the script, amazing. The writing is amazing, and all the acting is great. The kid is fantastic. This kid, Justin Henry, it was introducing Justin Henry in this movie. This might be the best child actor performance I've ever seen.
Really? Okay. I don't like children, so.
I mean, sure, but it's. I said a while ago with Bugsy Malone that I think getting a bad performance out of a child in a movie is completely at fault of the director. And it obviously, some kids are better actors than others, obviously. But I do think that a good director who knows how to work with kids can get a decent, workable performance out of pretty much any kid. Because they don't have all these self-conscious walls that adults have that make acting something you have to work at instead of this imaginary playground to play around in. This kid is phenomenal, Justin Henry. He did other stuff since then. He never got huge. Some movies and
he was Oscar nominated
for this one.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I think the youngest.
That makes sense for sure. How old was he when this came out? He was born in 1971, so he was like 7 or 8 when they were making this.
Yeah, that tracks.
That's amazing. Love this kid. But so writing, acting, great. The directing and the editing. The directing, pretty great. The cinematography is all really interesting. There's this one mirror shot that I absolutely love.
Oh, when Ted is meeting Joe.
Yeah, when he's meeting her for the first time after she leaves.
I love that shot.
The framing of it is great because she is sitting in the left side of frame, looking to the left side of frame in this table, but then we see this big mirror on the back wall of the restaurant, and he walks in, and in the mirror, he's on the right side of the frame, and he's also facing towards the left, the same as she is. So it's, we see these two parents at this same point of view, but then as he comes into frame, because of the mirror, he is now facing the other direction, and it's literally like this flip in perspective that he has. A beautiful little trick. But then some of it just doesn't make sense to me. I thought the ending was really abrupt.
I felt that the first time I watched it, and I felt it again watching this.
I felt like this movie could have gone for another half hour. Like, it felt like there was more to this that we weren't seeing.
I've got thoughts on it.
Sure.
Yeah, but you keep going.
Sure. So yeah, that ending, like, it really threw me through a loop when I saw it. I was like, okay, great. And then he sees her going up in the elevator and the door closes, and that's cut to credits. And I was like, wait, what? No, more. And then some of the editing is a bit like choppy in places. And this movie fades to black, I believe, 4 different times.
Yes, it does.
This is just a personal thing for me. I really don't like fades to black. It is a literal severing of the narrative. Movies are a visual medium. And so when you literally fade to black, it's like resetting things and saying like, and that's that. But now we're gonna do this instead. It's when it's used for like a character's narrative getting severed, like when someone goes unconscious in a movie and they fade to black and then fade into consciousness again. That I don't mind as much, because that has a emotional diegetic connection to what's going on in it. It's literally, now you're in the shoes of that character, having their narrative severed like that and then getting back into it. But when this movie is taking a more objective point of view on the things happening, it feels just kind of jarring. Like, I don't think the fade to black, the first one, I was okay with, because I didn't know the rest were coming, and I was like, okay, that's the first one is it's actually really beautiful, and I loved it when it first happened, because it's after she's left, and it's just that one. It's a one-shot take of the kid waking up his dad, and they're having breakfast, and it's just silent, and they've settled into this new routine they have. A lovely scene, and then it fades to black, and we get some time later. That was okay, I thought. But then it keeps happening, and I couldn't find any connection between the times that it happens, other than, and now this scene is over and we're going to something else. It's not like it was jumps in time that were specific and weren't happening in other places in the movie. It's not like it had any real thematic thing. It just kind of felt like, and now this scene, we let this sit for a minute, and then we fade to black. Even some of those times, it didn't really sit for a minute. It was just like, and then it fades to black. The last shot of the movie, when it cuts to credits, I mean, the ending felt abrupt to me to begin with, but I would have preferred, if that really is the last shot of the movie, I would have preferred if it sat on that last shot for just a few seconds longer to make that sink in more, because it felt just like, and the door closes, and we're there for about half a second, and then that's the end of it all. Yes. So I don't like fades to black, and this movie uses 4 of them, and I can't tell why, and that bothered me, and it felt, I don't know, I think there's just almost always something better you can do with the edit than just fading to black. But I realize that's a pretty me thing. That's a very me criticism. What do you think about fades to black?
You know, they don't bother me.
Yeah?
They don't bother. I was thinking, as you were saying it, I was trying to think, because it does happen. I wasn't thinking about it during the film.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't the first time I was watching it. I've seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a while since the last time I saw it. But the thing about adding to the narrative, it got me thinking about, because we saw this recently, Snowden.
Yes.
When Edward was having his, what was it? What did he have? He had a condition. So his seizures.
Yeah.
And it would fade to black, but it would slowly fade into it. I was thinking about that, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a point to the fade to black.
Exactly.
To this, I started thinking about, is it the passage of time? Because it goes across, by the end, it's like 18 months.
Yeah.
But it's like added, the characters tell you, like, every once in a while how long it's been. But there's not really any indication of how long it's been.
No.
You just know, like, oh, it's Christmas now. Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I do wonder, but you've just said that the fade to black wasn't linked to the time jumps.
Not specifically, because...
But then this is where possibly reading the book might help.
Maybe.
Because if it's in the book, maybe it's the end of a chapter, for example.
Yeah.
And that's just what they came up with to sort of deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that
it didn't bother me.
Sure.
That's the thing. It didn't bother me. I wasn't really looking at it, and it wasn't obtrusive for me to go, oh, that's really bothersome. And I feel like 4 isn't a lot to be bothersome, but it clearly bothered you.
1 is enough to make me reconsider my whole opinion of a movie, to be honest.
I mean, listen,
but 4 was like,
if
what?
it was like blackout and then I'm trying to think of a movie that does something like that, where it's like completely blackout and then it's something completely different.
Yeah.
Whereas with this one, you're really sort of following Ted.
Yeah.
Go through this journey, and that was. If there's anything that I do have things that I didn't quite like, but then it's an adaptation of a book, so you can't really complain about it because that's the story.
But that's I want to cut in there for a sec because I don't think that any movie should be able to stand by itself, even if it's an adaptation of a book.
Yeah, but the thing that I was sort of that got to me was Joe. How Joe sort of disappears. You see her at the beginning for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Then disappears for a good hour. A good hour she's gone. And it's just Billy. And obviously it makes sense. She's completely gone. You don't know where she is. I obviously knew she was coming back.
Yeah.
But then it is that thing of like the courtroom scene. The courtroom scene is like the last, well, it's not the exact last 30 minutes, but if the last 40 minutes of the film, the courtroom scene is like 30 minutes.
Something
and
like
I
that,
just, I don't know, I wanted more.
Sure.
I wanted more of the courtroom scene.
Sure.
How it ended, abrupt, but I felt that the first time, so I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Because I remember the first time I saw it and it just ended. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I want to see what happens next. I want to see if Billy is just going to accept this.
It felt like, it really felt to me like the story was not finished yet, and yet the movie is over. And that's, obviously that can be a choice that a movie makes, but it didn't feel like it was, and now this is the end of the movie, and yet the story goes on. To me, it just felt like, and that's the end of the movie. More story? You want more story? No, we don't have any more of that.
If it's the end of the book, it's the end of the book.
Sure, but then pace your movie differently, so that the ending doesn't feel so abrupt.
But that's because you've got the courtroom scene just before. You've got the courtroom scene, and that goes by quick. The courtroom scene goes by quick.
It does. Well, I mean, literally, like I said, literally just hold on that last shot for a few more seconds to let things sink in.
But then it tells a different story, because if you hold it, I feel like if you hold it longer, it sort of gives the audience the impression that maybe they'll make it work. Whereas they're not. It's done. It's done. I think that's the thing. Like, it's done. They're gonna raise Billy. Yeah. But those two, they're done.
Yeah.
They're done.
They're done for sure. I would have done a different last shot. I would have done it differently.
But does it affect the audience differently though? Because I get it, from my point of view, I get the impression that they're done.
Yeah, I got that impression too, but I think you can hold on a last shot that still makes that come true, makes that feel true. I mean, literally, with just the elevator door closing, that to me symbolizes, and that door is now shut, and they move on to something else.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Pacing and timing, editing things, really, something about it, it affects the rhythm of the flow in my head. And so it just stuck out. And yeah.
You know what? Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into
it. And this might turn into a therapy session. It might.
Oh, yeah.
If you're a child of broken home,
woo!
Join the club. Welcome.
Okay, this is going to be out of pocket. Do you think that people who come from separated parents, do you think we are more equipped for the world than People whose parents
Oh,
stay
yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's your first indication of how, like,
The world's not going to stay the same.
yeah. And, I was, the book I'm reading right now, Homo Deus,
Yeah.
actually talks about that, about how as children, you think the whole world revolves around you.
Yeah.
And if your parents separate, you start blaming yourself because you think it's your fault. Whereas it's two people who have their own problems. But as a kid, you can't even imagine that they've got their own problems. It's like, oh, it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault.
Yeah.
And I think it is that thing of, if it happens to you early, I think when it happens to you when you're older, you're like, it still hurts, but
Sure.
maybe you can handle it better. But when you're young, when that illusion shatters, and you know that, oh fuck,
Yeah.
what I thought isn't true. Oh god, yeah, therapy session time.
Yeah. That makes sense. When you're an adult, you can understand that it's two different people who just can't stay that way. But as a kid, it does. It's for me. It happened with me when I was too young to really remember much of it. So I don't remember, like, my normal from a very early age, almost as early as I can remember, was that my parents weren't together. So I don't think I internalized anything of, like, it's my fault that this has happened. I wasn't even young enough to comprehend something like that. But it did feel... I guess that's what I mean. Like, that was just my new normal all of a sudden. There wasn't even consideration of these two people that weren't together. That was outside my perspective.
Did they ever sit down with you and be like, there's a reason we're not together, or like explain to you like we're not together, were you just okay, like, oh, they're just not together, and they never spoke to you about it?
They never like both sat me down and explained everything that happened. I know why it happened. I've had chats and conversations with them over the years, but that was always more casual, just like, yeah, what happened, how did that feel, or they'll just, tell me stories about something back then. But I think because I was so young, now this is apparently it did hit me quite hard when it happened. Of course it did. I don't remember it though.
Oh my god, did you suppress it?
It's completely blacked out, man.
You suppressed it?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I don't remember any of that. I don't remember them not getting along. I don't remember when my dad left the house. I don't remember these things.
Fuck. You suppressed it.
I just know that they happened, yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Apparently, when my dad left the house, and it's not like he walked out or anything. It's they by that point knew that they couldn't stay together, and so my dad was moving out. Apparently, when that happened, I was really, really upset because I, on some level, understood that my dad was leaving for like he was saying that he had to go and he wouldn't be around anymore. Kind of like some of the conversations in this movie. And I was really upset and I was crying, and he said, I know it's hard, but I need you to be a big boy right now. I need you to be a big boy. I'm going to see you soon. And apparently I said back to him, no, daddy, little boy, little boy. No memory of that whatsoever.
Yeah, mine is completely different because I was around 12, 13. And I think, well, you sort of, as a black person, you grow up with the trope of the black father isn't around, yada, 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 yada. And funny thing is, like, before that, I was like really close with my dad.
Yeah.
Probably the closest human being to me out of anyone else. And I don't know, it was like, it was my dad, you know? You sort of look at your dad as like a superhero.
Yeah.
Then I remember he sort of like sat me and my brother down, and this was like no, it actually must have been like 13, 14. Because we'd been here, we'd moved here for a couple of years, and I remember my sister was like really young, and I remember he sat me and my brother down, and sort of just like told us that, you know, he was leaving.
Yeah.
Like in a couple of days, like going back. And I went, well, I didn't say a single thing. Didn't say a single thing. My brother sort of pushed back a bit. But I didn't say a single thing. Didn't say a single thing. Didn't even utter a word. And that's sort of like the thing of going back to when it hits you as a kid. And you, like, in that moment, a version of me died.
Yeah.
Like, completely died. That version that was, like, growing up looking at my dad like a hero, Superman, gone. Completely. And it was, you know, I'm trying to think if I blamed myself for it. I don't think I blamed myself for it, because growing up until that point, I could always tell that my mom and my dad didn't really get along. They would always fight. And I remember I had one birthday where, this was when I used to celebrate my birthday, and I sort of blew out the candles and I sort of made a wish, and my wish was for them to separate.
Wow.
This was years prior. I must have been like 6, 5.
Wow.
I remember wishing that.
That's a big thought for a kid to have.
Because but that's sort of like the thing, right? Because in my head, it was like, these two clearly don't like each other.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I didn't know why they were together. I didn't know why, for example, my mom had stayed with him for so long. And then when it actually did happen, when he actually left, that completely took me out.
Yeah.
Completely took me out. Because it's one thing wanting your parents to separate. Like your parents, for example, they both decided it's not working.
Yeah.
But for your dad to leave, to walk out.
Yeah. It's world shattering.
It completely fucks you up.
Yeah.
Which explains a lot about me. But, it's, see, we've gone into the therapy talk.
Already.
But I feel like this is a great time to enter this film.
Okay.
Because it opens with Joe putting Billy to bed. And they have this great line where Joe goes, night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, I'll see you in the morning light. And it goes between, back and forth between Billy and Joe. And this, going back to the great acting, for anyone who hasn't seen the film, it's Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep giving masterclasses. Highly recommend. But in that moment, you see Joe saying goodbye.
You can just tell that things are not okay.
And it's so masterful, because you're immediately entered into this world where you know this woman's about to do something. Now, going back to the first time I saw it, this woman is about to do something. You don't know what she's about to do. And it just sort of goes to Ted. And Ted is having a great time.
He's a hotshot ad salesman. He's chauvinistic. He's cocky. Yeah.
And for good reason. He's just got a promotion. His boss loves him.
Mm-hmm.
And he arrives and he's looking to celebrate. And he's not even listening to Joe.
No, she's saying very matter-of-factly, I'm leaving you. I've taken $2,000 out of the savings account, and I'm leaving. And he is just, come on, what are you talking about? At first, he doesn't even say, what are you talking about? He just keeps going on with his business.
See, and in that moment, that's what I wanted my mom to do.
Mm.
That's what I wanted my mom to do. I wanted my mom to do that.
Yeah.
To sort of, and it's you have to think, this film came out in late 70s. Sort of the idea of a woman leaving her husband was still sort of taboo. As I think in the Western world it's less taboo now.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cultures, whether you want to talk about African culture, Muslim culture, sort of leaving your husband is sort of seen as, oh, you're not supposed to do that.
It's a huge deal. I mean, if anything, just for practical purposes, because for so much of history, women couldn't do that. They didn't have any sort of structure to do that with.
But I respected Joe because she leaves and tells him that she took out the $2,000 that she had at the beginning in the savings account. Mm-hmm. So she didn't take out all the money.
No. She's being extremely reasonable the whole time.
Extremely reasonable. And Ted does not, he's not even taking it seriously. He's like, oh, she's throwing off. She's having another hissy fit. Okay, whatever. You go and cool down.
Mm-hmm.
And then she leaves. And then Margaret, shout out to Margaret. I'm forgetting the actress's name.
Jane Alexander.
Jane Alexander. Now, when you first see Margaret, the film sort of puts you on Ted's side because you don't know yet.
Well, that's interesting because
the reason I say that is because you don't know why Joe is leaving at this point. You don't know why Joe is leaving. And because Ted says, did you put her up to this?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of implying that Joe and Margaret, they talk.
Yeah.
And obviously it's said in the film that Margaret has already splitted with her husband.
Yeah. Margaret's husband walked down on her a while ago.
But in that moment, you want to push back.
Obviously, I knew the basics of what this movie was about going into it. So there's a bunch of context that I couldn't get out of my mind when watching it. Towards the beginning, I'm not sure I felt more on one side or the other. I felt that Joanna was probably completely justified in what she was doing. Like I was seeing her do this thing, even saying goodbye to her kid and then heading out. I was just thinking, this is probably right for you, Meryl.
But we need to stop looking at it at the lens of two guys from separated homes in 2025. I think we need to look at it at the lens of guys in the 70s.
Well, sure. On that, though, what I said earlier that Ted was he was a bit of a chauvinist at the beginning. He's like talking not very well about women towards the beginning. There's this one great shot when him and his boss are leaving the office and they're walking down the street in New York and they're walking by a clothing store, a big department store or something, and there's just these mannequins in the window with all these different dresses and there's one stunning red coat. But to me, what I got from that shot was that these guys are literally walking past these women who are nothing more than objects around them.
But that is the mentality the men still do have.
Sure.
But that's a lot of mentality that men did have prominent in the zeitgeist.
Sure. But this movie is specifically highlighting that mentality.
Yes.
As a lead-in for what's happening.
There's this is why we'll get deeper into it. But Ted and Dustin fucking Hoffman gives a fucking great performance. Because how Ted starts off, it's really about the job. And how his self-worth is within the job. He sees himself as the guy who brings home the bacon. And I think when I look at Ted, I look at someone who reminds me of my father. Where he saw his role as, I'm getting the bacon, you stay at home and watch the kid.
We find out later that he specifically encouraged that lifestyle.
And that's sort of like, this is where I think it's because I know men with that mindset.
Sure.
So when you see how he is this successful person, and it's like, why would you, and he even says it like, he's riding high, and you're just gonna cut him off?
He's telling this story towards the beginning in his office about, how he's got all this new wealth and he's going in to buy, to buy a watch for the first time, and he's like scared shitless about the amount of money that he's about to spend, but he's so confident in doing it.
And I think it is that thing, and I'd love to. I feel like I'm not around these type of guys anymore in my life.
Yeah.
But I would love to meet these type of guys because I know they're out there.
Oh yeah.
I just do not interact with them. Don't have the time for them. I don't have the energy for them. But I would love to. There's something about that mentality of putting everything to, and you know what? Even as I say that, I know that I'm guilty of it. And it's something that I sort of, I feel like there'll come a time in my life when it's really going to confront me. This idea of putting your career first over everything else.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, and I'll even say this for you as well.
Yeah.
I'll even say this for you. I think it's something that we are at some point going to have to confront. But the great thing about the film is that as soon as Joe leaves and Ted has to sort of handle everything.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noted when they were making breakfast is how the French toast.
Oh God!
How they were making the French toast.
I wrote down that toast is going to be terrible.
But this is the brilliant thing, is that towards the end of the film, when they're making French toast again,
yep. And it's all done right, and
it's all done right, and that's when you realize that Ted and Billy have just they've clicked. Yeah. Ted has gotten to this point where he's taken the responsibility, and it's really about career over family, or family over career. And you see how it gets flipped, because women, I think we live in a day and age where now women are sort of encouraged to go for the career.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't the case before. But for men, it was.
It's always been that way.
But for Joe to sort of run off and try and live her life away from the kid, I respected that.
Yeah.
Even though it's shit for the kid.
It's interesting because when she comes back and she says that she wants Billy, there is the part of me that it's like, well, but no, you don't get to just say that.
Yeah.
You can't just disappear for a year and a half and then come back and say that you want to take charge again. That's not what this kid's life is anymore. And great for you. You found yourself. I think that's good and important. But it's I don't know how to feel about that.
You know, it's quite interesting because as she leaves, she says, "I'm not patient enough for him."
Yeah.
And that's before you've seen what the kid is like. And for anyone who's ever been around kids long enough, and I'm not talking about, a kid has come to visit and you get to play with them and you just see, no. I mean, like spending elongated time with the kid.
Yeah.
You do realize, okay, they're really testing my patience now.
The scene with the ice cream.
Oh.
When Dustin just keeps saying, "Don't you dare, don't you dare," and the kid wants ice cream. He doesn't want to finish his dinner, the Salisbury steak that he had and loved last week. Which at that moment I thought, Ted is brilliant at manipulating people in general. He's great at talking his way out of things. To the point that, like, I can't even be sure that he did serve this meal last week and the kid loved it. He might just be gaslighting the kid into eating his dinner.
Oh yeah, he definitely is.
Which is a perfectly valid tactic to get a kid to eat dinner.
He definitely is. You have to gaslight kids.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what's good for them.
No, and they're going to be picky about that. I was picky about food, and yeah. But yeah, the kid goes to the fridge, he gets the step stool, he's getting the ice cream, and every step of the way, Dustin is like, "Don't you dare, don't you dare, don't you do that." And the kid is just, he's a habitual line pusher, you know?
And that's the thing about, like, having kids, and the reality of it is that everyone wants to have a kid. Well, sorry, let me scratch that back. There are some people who want to have a kid, but the reality of actually having a kid, the responsibility that it takes, and the experience of what you have to go through. And I think it's different for me because I'm at that age now where people are asking me when I'm getting married or kids and stuff. And I'm like, I've already raised a kid.
Yeah.
I raised my sister. Like, I have the experience. I don't need to jump into it. I know what it's like.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need that stress right now. You know? There's a reason I don't have hair anymore. Because I've had stress. I've had the stress.
Sure.
But I loved the struggle that Ted was facing.
Yeah. Because
he was starting to see what Joe was having to do. And I think the great thing about that is that for a lot of men, you have to go back and think, as a man watching this in the 70s, especially if you're a working man, you're seeing what it's like for the other side, but it's through the lens of a man.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing a man do it. You're seeing the struggle of it. And realizing that this job that you take for granted, this job that you leave for your wife, is actually really fucking important.
Yeah.
And it's not until you actually go through it yourself that you go, oh shit, she was doing a lot.
Yeah.
Having to make sure he eats, having to make sure he goes to his parties,
Gets to school on time,
gets to school on time, homework done, like so many things you're responsible for another human being.
Yeah.
Whereas Ted was only responsible for his career. Now he has to be responsible for his career and a kid. And obviously he can't have both.
It's difficult to do both. And to the point where he gets fired from his job because...
Before we get that,
okay,
there were... I'm forgetting, it may have been more than that.
Yeah.
I think there's 3 scenes in total where Ted is speaking to Jim, his boss.
Yeah.
The one is at the beginning, where they're talking about the promotion. The second one is when Ted is telling Jim that Joanne left.
The morning after she left.
The morning after. And you can tell Jim really doesn't care. and he's only concerned about, are you able to do this job?
He's concerned about the practicalities of it. Ted is in complete denial of it. He's saying she's going to go off for a few days, blow off some steam, and then she'll be back. And there's a point where Jim says, okay, let's seriously consider the possibility that she is gone. And you can tell that Ted is about to cry at that moment of like, it's all sinking in, and it can't. He can't get his head around that. It's the whole world, the whole weight of that crashing down on him in that one moment. It's a great little moment. But yeah, his boss is just concerned about, all right, practicalities of this, you need to still do your job. There's one more little bit in between that and the point where he gets fired, which is at the office party. And Ted's saying that I gotta go home and pick up Billy. And his boss is trying to tell him a story, trying to like tell him this funny thing that happened, and Ted's like, "Sorry, I gotta go."
It's the scene when the morning after.
Yeah,
there was a great line towards the end of the scene where Jim goes, "I gotta count on you for 110%, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I gotta have that, Ted." And Ted reassures him and just goes, "You can count on me 25 hours a day, 8 days a week, because I'm not a loser, Jim."
I wrote that down too. I'm not a loser.
And it's like, oh, he equates failing at his job as being a loser, and like not succeeding. He's not even thinking about succeeding with his kid. It's all about the job.
Yeah.
And at that point in the film, you see how much he's clinging on to this idea. See, sometimes in life, it's about acceptance.
Mm.
And I was trying to think, if I'm in Ted's situation, now, at this point, this version of Tawana, how would I handle it? And I was thinking, I would like to think that I would be willing to accept I cannot work the Mid-Atlantic deal.
Mm.
And I need to cut my hours back because my kid needs me. I would like to think that. I don't know if I would, but I'd like to think that. Because Ted works in marketing, it's not really said what specifically he does, even with the Mid-Atlantic deal.
Yeah.
But he's sort of needed a lot.
Yeah. One of the big moments that is one of his failures on that account is when he has to take his kid to school, and so he shows up late to a big meeting. It's interesting that the movie highlights the points at which he cannot achieve what his job expects of him.
Yeah.
More than it highlights anything that he actually does in the job.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even what's the scene when he shows up with a bunch of groceries?
Yeah.
And he's going into a meeting, and his assistant, as soon as he opens the door, the assistant goes, "You got a PTA meeting at 4:00 at your kid's school."
Yeah.
And everyone just sort of, it's a room full of men, and you can see the disappointment on their faces, like, this guy really isn't about it.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting, corporate culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really what it is about corporate culture.
Bottom line at all costs.
And how certain people are in this world, a world that I would never want to be involved in. But they're in this world, and everything has to be 110%. You have to devote yourself to this. And granted, in our space, we have to be devoted 110%. But at the exact same time, I sort of feel like we have a bit of leeway, maybe.
Us as actors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we have a bit more leeway. We can say no.
Because we deal in a creative space, most people that we work with are more in tune with that side of things as opposed to efficiency, profits, da 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 da. So to the point that if we're doing a show and we say, I gotta come to this rehearsal late because I gotta take care of someone, the people we work with are more likely to understand that.
Yeah. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. But it's the difference between, well, not the difference, but when you start to see as the passage of time goes over and Ted is trying to balance the work and life, you're talking about the ice cream moment, but also the time when Ted is trying to do some work and Billy spills all over his work, of which I could see that from a mile away.
Yeah.
I was like, why do you have a glass with something sticky probably next to your work? And that's a kid playing with a toy. Like, you can see what's that. This is when you know he doesn't understand how kids work.
Yeah. He's just not clocked onto those risk factors yet.
But he learns. There's a great scene when it's Christmas time and I don't even know what they're making, but it's like decorations.
Yeah, like strings, things to put on a tree. I made these with my mom a few times. She'd like little paper rings and then popcorn on a string.
But they're so in sync.
Yeah.
It's when you see them out of sync and in sync.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I like about it is that he adapts to the fatherhood role quite quickly. I
don't know if it's quite quickly, because there's a passage of time. We just don't know how long it takes.
Yeah, in terms of the movie.
Yeah.
It's quick. Which means that we get to spend quite a lot of time just seeing him be a pretty good dad.
Yeah.
Which we don't see in a lot of movies.
No.
And I was watching this thinking, like, this is just really, really nice, seeing a father understand what he has to sacrifice and what he has to balance to have an actually good relationship with his kid.
And it's not just the relationship between him and his kid that develops, but his relationship with Margaret as well that develops. Especially, like, they've got these dates where they go to the park with their kids and they just sat there watching. And obviously, it's like two people who've got kids. They're both separated from their partners. And they're just sharing their days. But I think it's two scenes they've got where they're in the park. But the first one, I just loved it. Because there was an intimacy that they had with each other.
Yeah.
That was so sweet. And it wasn't like, oh, these two are gonna fall in love or anything that you might see, like she's falling for him. Like, no, it was just like, no, they're just friends.
They're stuck in the same boat and they're helping each other get through it.
And that's a great thing about humanity. You know, I think you get bogged down within the shit that people do. But there's also great things, and in that moment you see how two people, because of circumstance, are brought together, and they somehow make it work. They somehow are able to just support each other, support their kids, give each other tips, and just, you know, it's not the end of the world. At that point, Ted isn't even thinking about Joe. For a good while, Joanna coming back is completely out of Billy and Ted's mind.
Yeah.
Which is funny because, we missed this. There's a great scene when Joanna sends a letter.
I have the whole letter written down.
Do you have the letter?
Yep. It's Ted reading it. It's just like a few days after she's left, and so they get this letter, and Ted's all around. He's sitting Billy down. And he's like, "All right, we got a letter from Mom. We're gonna read it. We're gonna read it." And he thinks that it's gonna be to him, and he realizes very quickly, "My dear," and he stutters, "My dear sweet Billy." All right. Mommy has gone away. Sometimes in the world, daddies go away and mommies bring up their little boys, but sometimes a mommy can go away too, and you have your daddy to bring you up. I have gone because I must find something interesting to do for myself in the world. Everyone has to, and so do I. Being your mommy was one thing, but there are other things too, and this is what I have to do. I did not get a chance to tell you this, and that's why I'm writing to you now. I will always be your mommy, and I will always love you. I just won't be your mommy in the house. I'll be your mommy of the heart. And at this point, Billy turns up the TV. He's watching cartoons, and he's not interested in this because this is all stuff that's going over a kid's head. All he knows is that his mom is not there anymore. But as he's turning up the volume, Ted goes on and says, I now must go and be the person I have to be. And then he stops and says, okay, we're going to read this another time. And Billy says, I don't care.
It's in that moment, especially when Ted sees that the letter isn't addressed. He's not even mentioned.
Yeah.
And this is how great of an actor Dustin is. The cue of that choice of like, oh, she didn't even mention me. Okay. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. And there's no mention of if she's coming back. It's literally a goodbye letter. And like you said, Billy... See, I sort of took it as Billy, number one, doesn't care. But number one, in that moment, he's probably mad at his mom.
Yeah, it's like I said, this is all abstract ideas for a 7-year-old. That someone has to go and find something interesting and be the person that they have to be. That doesn't fucking mean anything. His mom is not there anymore. That's all he knows. He doesn't know she's coming back. So it's just not in his mind.
And right after that, Ted starts packing away.
Yeah. Putting all these photos away. In that sequence, we pan over a bookshelf of Joanna's books. And I looked up the books, and they are The Awakening, Janine, The Woman in White, A Painter of Our Time, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, Zelda, A Biography, Sermons, and Soda Water. All of these are basically about women finding themselves and finding empowerment in their times.
So what you're saying is women shouldn't read. That's what you're saying?
Not saying that.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, The Awakening is about a woman who struggled for independence in the American South in the early 1900s. Zelda, biography is a biography of Zelda Fitzgerald, who had her own very interesting relationship with F. Scott Fitzgerald and her individual personness as opposed to being his wife and how they deal with it. Great little choices to put on a bookshelf.
It's the detail. The detail.
The detail.
And this is when you know these are fucking actors.
Yeah.
Because they took in the details. And the script is so good and it has so many layers to it that if you really comb through it, you go, it's all there. It's all there for you. You just have to do the work.
This is one of the most perfect scripts that I've seen.
Yeah, I'm starting to think bad actors piss me off. That's what I'm starting to think. Bad actors piss me off. But not everyone gets to work with a script like this.
Yeah.
But it's the bond between Ted and grows.
Mm-hmm.
Ted and Billy grows. And it gets to the point where you'll in the film, you're like, Ted is getting a groove of this. Okay? You think he's getting a groove of this. Everything's going well. Billy's doing well. And Ted is dropping Billy off at school. And you just see a shot of Joanna.
She is like Michael goddamned Myers.
Yeah, it is quite scary.
It's literally like you just suddenly... He gets into a taxi as he drops his kid off. He gets into a taxi and goes off. And right as he's dropping his Billy off, he's like making sure that Billy's going to the right classroom, and he's walking away, but he's walking backwards to keep looking at his kid. And in that moment, you just see that, oh no, he is fully shifted into this world. He is the father of this kid now, more than anything else. He gets into the cab and it goes off. And as the cab pulls away, behind it, we see this figure in a window across the street, and it literally does like a 3-level zoom,
yeah,
with cars passing in between it. Like, this is literally horror movie type stuff here. Brilliant.
It's I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, what the fuck, she's back.
Yeah,
she's back. And it is that thing where she's back, but the characters don't know it yet.
Yeah, and
you're just waiting for that bomb to go off to just see how everyone's gonna fucking react.
It's what I mean. It's like watching a horror movie and you see Mike Myers in the background. Not Mike Myers, Michael Myers. Mike Myers is Austin Powers. You see Michael Myers or Jason or whatever in the background, and you're like, uh-oh, these teenagers are about to get murdered. It's great. But then it fades to black after that.
Yeah.
So time does pass then. That's I guess the first time she's back in the city looking at her kid, and then it's a few months later because we know that she's been back for a few months. So, but see, then the time passes in other transitional scenes of the movie, and there's no fade to black. So I don't think that. Anyway,
there was a great scene when. Oh, this is the ice cream. Yeah. The ice cream scene. A little bit further in when they finally clash. Because Ted throws Billy into his room.
Yeah.
And they start shouting at each other. It's like, I hate you, oh, I hate you too. It's like, oh my God. And he closes the door on Billy. And you just hear Billy, but the camera's on Ted. And I'm forgetting, is Billy crying?
Yeah.
Yeah. You just hear Billy crying, and the camera's just on Ted. And he's like, oh, fuck. And at that point in the film, I was waiting for that. I was waiting for the clash. Because I was like, it needs to happen. The clash needs to happen between the two. Because that's the only way they're going to grow. It's almost like that thing of, you put two people together, it can't all be rosy all the time.
Yeah.
And when they clash, it actually helps the relationship.
It's a moment of big catharsis for both of them. When Ted goes back into the room to try to make things better, Billy asks, Daddy, are you going away? He says, no, I'm staying right here with you. You're not going to get rid of me that easy. Billy says, it's why Mommy left, isn't it? Because I was bad.
And I was thinking in that moment when Joe said, I don't have the patience for him. And I was like, you might be right. You might be right. If this is how you behaved, I can understand why Joe wanted to leave. Well, I can understand.
At least from my point of view, Billy isn't he's not an extreme case of child.
He's a spoiled brat.
You think so?
Ted even says it, and that's his kid.
Yeah.
He's a spoiled brat because he can't wait to finish his food and then have ice cream.
Yeah, but that is also at the point where this kid's entire world is up in the air. He doesn't know what the rules are anymore. And he does know that, he can get away with things with his dad that he might not be able to get away with it with his mom. But is that a spoiled brat, or is that just what any kid would do?
Not any kid. I think it's a culture difference.
Sure.
It's a culture difference.
Sure.
I think maybe white kids, yeah. Black kids,
sure.
No.
That's probably true.
No. Yeah. Black kids, you're spoiled. Eat your food and then you can have the ice cream.
Okay.
But it's obviously different because black people are not a monolith. So I'll take it back. Africans, especially the parents, would deal with that differently. Deal with that situation differently. And that's, you see, when I was watching this, I was thinking more about you.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh yeah, you're closer to this than I am.
Sure.
Even though we're both from broken homes. Because a lot of the behavior that Billy exhibits is not the behavior that I would get away with.
Sure. See, now that you've said this, I realize this is probably a relative thing because, yeah, in an America, white parents, the whole just socioeconomic class thing in America is different than it is over here. And I don't know what that's like in Zimbabwe at all, but I'm realizing now that this, yeah, it's a relative thing because in my head, for the kids that I grew up around, this is, I think any of them would try shit. I know kids who were way more fucking spoiled than what we see this kid.
See, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm looking at this kid, I'm like, you're fucking spoiled.
Sure.
Because you wouldn't get away with that behavior. wouldn't get away with that behavior. But that's, if you're aware of it, you're aware of it.
Yeah. Interesting.
But that's the thing, right? Of like, we're both watching the film, but because of my experience and your experience, where different things are hitting us slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly different. We're looking at people differently, slightly.
Yeah.
At an angle. I fucking love that about films. But the build up to them finally bringing the relationship to a halt leads to Joe coming back.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this at the beginning, where Joe and Ted finally meet.
It is almost exactly the halfway point of the movie.
Yeah.
Which, again, perfect script. Halfway point is when, all right, now the whole thing changes.
Yeah. Because it has to. Because you need to add some conflict now. Because now this, in some way, has been solved.
Mm-hmm.
The problem has been solved.
Yeah. So
now, how can you change it? Add Joe in.
Yeah.
Add Joe back in. And Joe... I'm laughing because Joe comes back and, you know, she's found herself. She went to California.
Yeah.
And clearly smoked some weed.
Went to therapy.
And Ted is just like, yeah. Initially, you can tell that Ted is thinking, okay, she's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
But immediately he realizes, no.
Yeah.
No. It's not happening. And obviously you've got the shot that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But one of the most famous shots in film history is when Dustin Hoffman hits the glass.
Yeah.
See, I was watching that this time around, and it's quite interesting how he moved the glass forward just towards the end of the scene. And I think he realized, oh no, I need this glass a bit further back. Because if he'd hit it in the initial position forward, it was going to hit Murrah in the face.
Yeah.
But if he moves it back, it just hits the wall. Now, what do you think about that? He didn't tell, apparently...
So, yeah. Some of the context I knew about this movie beforehand were some of these choices that Dustin Hoffman made. He does a phenomenal performance, and so does Meryl.
Oh, here we go.
But as actors, I don't want to get into this right now, but I do want to get into this maybe towards the end of the recording, because I think it's a very interesting conversation to have about the lines towards your scene partners.
Okay.
I mean, it's a great shot. Her reaction is great.
Yeah.
She was goddamn pissed off, you could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently he only told the camera operator that he was going to smash the glass beforehand.
Yeah, you can tell it was pre-planned. Because even you can tell he realized the glass is a little bit too far forward, and he moved it because it was literally he moved it and then he moved it back.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, you're planning this, okay? Which is I don't know. It's almost like that thing of like, do you want your actor to be in a flow state when they're doing a scene, or do you want them to be thinking as they're doing it? Whereas I always sort of feel like you have to be, a part of you needs to be aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You need to be aware of what you're doing, of which he clearly was. He made that decision, and he wasn't sort of, well, you go instinctive, but it's pre-planned.
Yeah, you have to be aware of it. I remember John saying at one point to us in school that if you completely lose yourself in the character, that is not only not healthy, but that you're not doing your job right at that point. You have to be aware of the situation you're in. And
you know, we will get into this conversation because it is an interesting conversation, and I feel like there's a couple of actors I would love to mention.
Yeah.
But after that scene, Ted immediately realizes what's going on because Joe tells him that she wants to be back in Billy's life, and he goes straight to the lawyer.
Yep.
Wants to know his rights.
And the lawyer's saying that, I'll bet that she's already lawyered up. She's probably been back for a few months to reestablish residency.
Of which she mentions it during the scene of like, oh yeah, I've been back for a few months.
Yeah.
And you can just see in Dustin like, a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. You haven't called. I was about to say texted.
You haven't sent a telegram in a fortnight.
But like, yeah, it is that thing of like, the lawyer's already letting him know that you're getting set up.
Yeah.
You're getting set up. And one of the great themes about this is that, and the lawyer mentions this, is that, what was the percentage? The percentage of how many times the court sides with the woman.
I don't remember.
I'm forgetting exactly what the number was.
Yeah.
But the majority of times, the court sides with the woman.
Yeah.
Of which I feel like that's still the case.
It's balanced out a bit more now. And there's always been, like it's easy to look at just that statistic and draw conclusions from it, but then there's always nuance in it, and the fact that a lot of the times women can't afford good custody lawyers and things like that. So it's a whole bunch of stuff. But in general, there is the historic mindset of the woman raises the kids, so you give the kids to the woman. And that is one aspect that is, it's definitely in play in this situation.
At this point, everything starts to unravel because,
yeah,
obviously, the things that are in favor of Ted is that he's got a place to live where Billy lives, and he's got a job, a good job, but then he loses the job because he loses the account and he gets fired.
Yep.
This is where I went, how big of a job is this? Because he wasn't earning that much.
Well, this is 70s money. I need to look this up because...
Yeah, what's inflation? I think it was just over 40K.
He was getting like... Oh, did I not write down how much he was making? I don't remember about what he was making. He was making like 34K.
34K.
I think that number comes up at one point. And she is making like 32K.
And it goes down.
$32K, 1979. Yeah, he gets a pay cut. He has to get this new job. $32,000 in 1979 is $149,000. So she's doing all right. She comes back. She's lawyered up. They've clearly planned this well, and she is okay.
But then him losing the job and having to find a new job, this is where I respected Ted.
Yeah.
because he quickly gets on it. You can see how he got to that point in his career, because when he is driven to achieve something, he goes for it and doesn't take no for an answer. I loved the scene with the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, I have to know right now.
This is one-time offer, gentlemen. You want me or you don't. Again, he's great at talking, and manipulation is harsh, but you know what I mean. Like, he knows how to make a situation.
I don't
go
feel
his
like
way.
manipulation is harsh, because I feel like everyone manipulates each other.
Yeah, exactly. If you take away the sort of more malicious connotations of manipulation, he knows how to make a situation work out for him.
Yeah.
And
it's even more impressive because it's during the Christmas period, and they're literally having a Christmas party.
It is
during the interview.
Office Christmas party, so it is the last day of work before everyone goes on holiday.
And he has to make sure he's got a job just before the custody battle begins. And he manages to get it, but it's less than he was making. Of which he doesn't know at this point that Joe is making more than him.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing. Because now she's able to provide for Billy better than he can.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of like I don't know how I feel about that. Because the difference isn't that much. I think it's like 4K?
Something like that, yeah. He's making, at the new job, like 28,000, something like that.
Yeah. It's not a big difference. But okay, whatever.
In 70s money, that would have been about, I guess, 10K difference.
But there was a great scene when the court decides that Joe can see Billy.
Yeah.
And Ted takes Billy to the park. And you just see Billy run off.
Yep.
When he sees Joe.
Runs straight towards his mom.
And you just see a shot of Ted. And it's completely silent.
Yeah.
It's him in Central Park just looking on. And it's a little bit hard done by, because at this point it's been like 15 months.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, bro. Like, your dad stepped up. You're just gonna forget about it. I mean, I get he's a kid, but still, like, mommy comes home and you're just gonna run off.
But that's the thing. When you're a kid, you take for granted what normal is. And so now his dad is normal. He doesn't realize the symbolic importance of that moment. He's just like, yeah, and I'm gonna see dad again tonight. But that's my mom. When I was a kid, I would spend the weekends at my dad's and school weeks with my mom.
Oh, that's the deal that Ted was getting.
Yeah, I had it a bit better. His was like 2 weekends a month or something, and
every other weekend.
Yeah,
and then 1 day a week.
Yeah,
which was basically night.
Yeah, that's not quite the same deal I got. But I mean, for me, it was just like that was the norm. I would, say goodbye to my mom, not see her for 3 days. Okay, it's Monday morning, say goodbye to my dad and not see him for the week. And as a grown person thinking back on that, I wonder what that did to my mindset, how that's contributed to my ability to compartmentalize things. And then I also think about, my parents and my dad saying goodbye to me for 5 whole days, which is like 5/7 of my childhood to a certain point he didn't get to spend with me, and then the weekends where my mom then had to be not with me in the weekdays when I was going to school, she had to be the enforcer parent. And that dynamic the movie got me thinking.
Oh, see, that's... It's funny you bring that up, because now I'm starting to think, like, for me, I'm thinking about the parents specifically, because I do know that, like, when my dad left, it was really hard for my mom.
Yeah.
Because obviously, we'd only been here for like a couple of years. She was in a new environment, new culture. She had a toddler, 2 young kids, and now she has to be the mom and the dad, of which you're talking about having 2 sons who don't have a male role model. And everything just sort of flipped because now, obviously, economically speaking, my mom wasn't earning enough to look after 3 kids. So my brother had to find a job. And then I had a job, which was to look after my sister because my mom was working, my brother was working, so I had to look after my sister. And it's funny, the funny thing is that you said how it's sort of, that affected you, your experience affected you. I wonder how that experience affected me.
Yeah.
Because I remember speaking in therapy about this, going, I felt like my childhood just completely went away. I never got the chance to be a kid. I was immediately thrusted upon having this responsibility, of which on top of that, you're in fucking high school and you're having to, you know, it's early puberty.
Yeah.
You're having to go through all this and like, you know, I always had the friction of, I want to be a kid. You know, I want to spend time with my friends, go to parties and stuff like that. But I couldn't because I had the responsibility of like, after school, I have to go and pick up my sister from school or childminder and make sure, you know, she eats, make sure she does her homework, make sure she baths, like everything had to be done, look after the house. It's like, oh God. And now I think about it, I'm like, how the fuck did I do that shit? Fucking that young. Which is probably the reality for a lot of people. It's like, how the fuck do you do that shit? Which I think links to now where I'm like, I don't really feel like having a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, and I think I've already mentioned this during this episode, but like, yeah. But then you get to that point now where you're looking at your parents, and you're like, my mom had to deal with a lot, but also my dad. Because I remember being mad at my dad. But then when I started to think about it, I was like, he was in a new environment, new culture. He was finding it hard to adapt. You know, it's really hard for people, immigrants, to sort of come into a new environment and have to change. Especially at that age. You're talking about a man who's in his 40s. He knows a certain way of life, a way of thinking, a way of behaving that just isn't allowed in the Western world in that way. And it is that thing of like, it was tough for him. But at that time, I wasn't thinking, oh, it's tough for him. I was thinking, oh, he's a fucking dickhead for doing that. It's only after having therapy where I went, oh, you know what? Yeah. You know, it was tough for him. And that was a big decision to have to leave your family behind. And have to really sort of, I don't even know if you started again, but that's sort of like the thing of like, for you, you were having your mom and your dad.
Yeah.
Even though it was different intervals, whereas I completely lost my dad. And I still don't know how much that affected me till this day. Life, man, life is fucked up.
Yeah.
Shit's fucked up, son. Shit's fucked up.
And yet we survive.
Yeah. My God, what a therapy session.
Yeah.
Where were we?
There's going to be a little bit more to come. This is probably going to be the longest episode we've done yet because I still have things I know I want to talk about before.
Oh, yeah.
Where were we?
Let's go into the custody battle.
Just before that, right after Ted first gets a lawyer, And the lawyer's saying, she's probably planning things. You need to start thinking about things. And the lawyer says to him at one point, now is time to seriously consider whether or not you want to continue to take care of this kid.
Yeah.
And my gut reaction to hearing that is, well, fuck you, guy. That's my kid. But then, that's a reasonable thing to ask in a custody battle, because it's going to drag everyone down in it. My dad, he has a law degree. He, for a long time, was an editor at a legal magazine. And he was in charge of editing the family law stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so because of that, he went to different conferences and stuff. And so he knew a lot of family law lawyers. And there was this one quite well-regarded family law lawyer, custody lawyer, who told my dad that at the beginning of every case that this lawyer takes on, he sits down, the first meeting with both of the parents there together, he sits down and asks them, not about like how much, and it's divorces too, so it's not about how much money they want to take, how much they want to take the other kid, like how much they want to do this to the other person. He asks them, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how do you want your kids to feel about you?
Which is similar to what the lawyer says of like, how tough do you want me to go at her?
It's similar. I think it's a more modern attitude than the lawyer has in this movie, because this lawyer, I don't like this lawyer.
But he's telling the truth, though.
He's doing what he needs to win the case in this time, in this environment. But apparently that question, how do you want your kids to feel about you, always would set the parents on a different mindset. And I watching this movie, I thought, I wish someone had asked these two that question. But anyway, the lawyer tells him that he has to, one of the things he says is make a list of pros and cons about taking care of Billy. And it is a beautiful shot of Ted sitting at home as he's biblically framed by all the drawings that Billy has done over the time on the wall behind him. And he's making this pros and cons list. And he's writing down the cons, and on the cons is money, no privacy, work affected, no social life. And this is as the lawyer is narrating if he's sure he wants to take care of his child. And then Dustin goes to write the pros, but he doesn't write anything down. He gets up. We see the last con he wrote down, which is no let up. But then he just goes into his room and he just holds his son. And it's beautiful, because like how can you file all of that down into a list of pros on a sheet of paper?
It's the brilliant thing about that scene is Dustin's performance, even as he's writing it. Because money was not underlined, no privacy was not underlined, work affected was underlined once, no social life was underlined twice, no let up was underlined 3 times. And that's when you could see the frustration as he was writing it. And then to juxtapose that with him going off to hold Billy, it's like, he really, see, in that moment, you can tell he's contemplating it, but he comes to the decision of, he's my kid.
Yeah. You can't itemize that.
He's my kid. No matter how much the career means to him, it's his kid. And the bond has grown at this point, which makes me, you have to think how close they were at the beginning of the film up until this point. Would he have made the same decision at the beginning of the film?
I don't think so.
And oh God, oh God.
Yeah.
See, right after that, you move into the courtroom scene. Is that right after?
Just about, yeah. The only thing we haven't touched on that's happened before all of this is when Billy falls in the park.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god, cannot believe. Okay, so that's the second scene with Margaret in the park, and they're sort of chatting it up, and you find out that Margaret's ex has gotten back in touch. Oh no, they haven't gotten back in touch. He's with someone.
He's shacked up with some new broad. And she's gone on a date recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the sort of Billy's playing with a toy on some monkey bars.
He's climbing up high, and the tension built up in this scene is so good.
It's quite interesting. This is where you go to the script, because Ted mentions, Billy, get down. And you see a shot of Billy at the top, and he goes back to those two talking. And Margaret suggests, oh yeah, I'll go over and get him down. And they're laughing, and she goes over, and she's trying to get him down, and then suddenly he just falls.
It's not that she even goes over. She's telling the story, talking about the date. They're having a good time. They're getting caught up in their conversation. And she stands up, and as the tension's building, you see him high up, and just in the back of your mind, that primordial thing of that child danger, it's going, the alarms are off in your head. She stands up, and we suddenly get this low angle shot looking up at her from the bench. And it's just this, it just makes you feel small and like everything is out of your control all of a sudden. And yeah, and then he falls. And he's bleeding from the head immediately.
There was a cut to black. Did it cut to black? Just before he started running.
I don't think it cuts to black then.
Because
that's a different park scene. It's the first time they're in the park when it cuts to black. When oh god, wait, where is it?
Because I felt,
I don't remember then. Yeah,
I thought that he fell. It was a quick cuts to black, and then you see Ted running, holding Billy.
I don't remember. Maybe.
And he's telling everyone to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Which is a great representation of how far he's come.
Yeah.
Because he's... What's the word? I don't know what the word is. But him putting in that physical effort to make sure that Billy's okay and run all the way to the hospital to stay with Billy, even as when he hears that he has to get 10 stitches. It's like, I've had stitches, but I'm too young to remember them. But those scars last. I still have my scar. Still got both. Yeah, still got both of them. But it is that thing of like, as a father, you feel like I can imagine, like if it was, that's the thing with my sister. Our relationship is sort of fucked up because I'm her brother, but I'm like a pseudo father at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that if that were to happen to my sister, my God, would I feel like a failure. I would feel like I failed. And you can see it. You can see it in Ted, where you go, oh God, like, fuck, I failed. And he even says it. This is just before he meets Joe. He even tells Joe the story of like, oh yeah, you got, and I felt like a failure. Because it's so true. You don't want your kid to get hurt.
Yeah.
You don't want them to. You feel like you're the protector. You feel like you have to look after them. My God, Like, I'm getting so emotional right now because I'm just thinking, when I do have my own kid, my God, would I be so protective?
You want to protect them from everything, but you can't keep them in bubble wrap their whole life.
And that's sort of like the thing that Margaret and Joe even tries to tell him, like, it's okay, like, you know, it's not your fault, you know, these things happen.
Yeah.
But for him, it's such a new experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if did you ever have like a big accident when you were staying with your dad?
No, not really.
Wow, your dad was that responsible, huh?
Well, my parents, they were both responsible, but I was also never, I was never really getting into like physically dangerous situations. I was an indoor kid. I've never broken a bone. I've never had stitches.
You've never broken a bone?
Nope.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Lucky you. You think you're gonna go your whole life without breaking a bone?
Maybe. I'm not a physically adventurous person.
I've been in a car accident. I've fallen from monkey bars. Fuck. My arm's been broken. What else? My leg's been shattered.
Oy.
What else? A few things from playing sports with my hand. My hand got cut. That scar's gone.
Yeah.
Just faded. Yeah, quite a few. I've got quite a few scars. I remember, this is completely off topic, but I remember those are girl ones, and started getting into who's got more scars.
Yeah.
Started playing that game and we were showing off scars.
Jesus.
We were like, oh yeah, I got this, was in a car accident when I was 18 months old. Yeah. She couldn't beat that one. She couldn't beat that one. She couldn't beat that one.
Damn.
But, wow, okay, so, the stitches, Joe, the courtroom scene.
Yes. The custody battle.
So we have been building up to this point throughout the film. And I was conflicted throughout.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, I mean, okay. So when Joe leaves, I'm conflicted. Because even though watching her, I was thinking, oh, I wish my mom did that.
Yeah.
I was also thinking, oh, but you're fucking up the kid if you leave. And then during the custody battle, which it turns nasty, but I feel like it could have turned nastier.
It could have gotten much nastier. At one point they mentioned that to appeal the ultimate decision, then it would lead to bringing Billy up on the stand. And I thought the movie was going to go there, and it didn't. Now that would have been very dramatically interesting, but also, thank God, because that would have fucked a kid up.
Because the lawyer sort of goes, well, Joe's lawyer sort of builds it up.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. At some point, Joe says, I was his mother for 5.5 years. Ted took over the role for 18 months. And I was like, I understand the point you're making. I get it. But at the exact same time, he's done a lot of growth.
Yeah.
He's really stepped up in those 18 months. Which is funny because Margaret mentions it when she testifies, where she completely goes off script and speaks directly to Joe and just goes to her and like, you just see them now and you'd see how much he's changed.
Yeah. And she says that right after the lawyer has, Joe's lawyer has gotten out of her that Margaret advised Joe to leave. Or at least in their conversations before it happened, that Margaret said, if you think that you need to leave, then you should do that. You should, And Margaret says, I didn't really think that she was going to go through with it, but basically they're trying to establish that the relationship was bad.
But then I loved the angle that Ted's lawyer went with, where he was trying to paint her as a bad mother.
Yeah. Oh God. This is why I don't like this lawyer. He like fucking screams at her at one point to get her to answer, and I'm like, I understand your legal case, the strategy, but even then, screaming at a
Gotta break it down.
I don't think that's allowed. I mean, it probably was in the 70s, but these days I'd be like, that seems like that's something's wrong with that. You shouldn't be allowed to scream at people on the stand.
I mean, it's the scene with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise in A Feel Good Man.
Yeah.
He starts shouting at him whilst he's on the stand.
That's the military. This is a...
Doesn't matter where you're at. If you get on the stand, you're gonna get grilled. You're gonna get grilled. I told you I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid.
Wow.
At a certain point, I wanted to be first thing I wanted to be was a Power Ranger.
Naturally.
That didn't you couldn't have it.
I don't think it's too late.
Letting everything go to become a Power Ranger. Hopefully, fingers crossed, AI is gonna help. But Ted's lawyer berates Joe.
Yeah.
And at some point, he asks her, were you a failure at the one most important relationship in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Which is in reference to Joe being a wife and a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe just looks at Ted and he mouths, no. And she just nods, yes. Judge goes, is that a yes? Yes. It's like, oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
Man, oh man.
I love that this movie, you're making a movie about a custody battle. The obvious choice to make is to make it brutal and ruthless, and they're both trying to gut each other. But the so much smarter, so much more interesting choice is that they don't hate each other. They don't want this to be happening to each other.
And it's the thing of they both have their flaws.
Yeah.
And it's not really their fault. It's not really their fault.
No.
It's not Joe's fault that her mental health got to the point where she felt that she needed to leave.
Yeah.
It's not Ted's fault that he's in a system that requires him to devote every single time he has to his job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their fault. But the person who suffers is Billy.
Yeah.
And it is... see, that's where, going back to the conflict, is that with her mental health, I got it. I was with her. Like, yeah, that must be tough. Because that's when it's established how Ted sort of saw Joe as like this wife that would stay at home and not really have her own life. Her life is looking after the kid.
No, she had a job when they got married, and then she left her job, implied that he said that she should leave her job. And she talked about getting another job, but he said you wouldn't be able to find one that would make enough money to afford childcare for all the time that you wouldn't be able to spend with Billy. Yeah, it was the 70s. Gender roles were so much more strict then.
But, it's, speaking of gender roles, because when Ted testifies, he says, my wife would always say to me, why can't a woman have the same ambitions as a man? I think you're right. Maybe I've learned that much, but by the same token, I'd like to know what law is it that says a woman is a better parent simply by virtue of her sex. Like, oh.
Great line.
Great fucking script.
Great script.
Great fucking script.
Yeah.
Because then it's that dilemma within society. And I feel like Marriage Story. I love Marriage Story. But I love Marriage Story because I love Kramer versus Kramer. But the reason I wouldn't put Marriage Story on the same level as Kramer vs. Kramer is because this film goes deeper into the different themes and society than Marriage Story does.
It goes deeper while also not saying it out loud so much.
Yes. And it is that thing of how I look at our society right now and I think, how much have we changed? Okay, so we say, okay, women can have careers, men. I actually don't feel like men really speak about wanting to be a stay-at-home dad.
No, that's seen as not masculine.
Yes.
So that gets criticism from other men, and then, I mean, also other women too. That's just not seen as a normal thing to do.
Which is the sort of the problem with it, of women wanting to have a career is seen as masculine, but men wanting to stay at home, look after a kid is feminine. But for a man to get to a point of even buying a home or getting a woman to build a family with, you do have to be on an economic level, which society now is really hard to do.
Yeah.
Which is where you get into the incels and all that stuff. And you get your Andrew Tates, who are telling, this is what you have to be a real man. And what does it mean to be a real man? I think we touched upon this. Did we touch upon this on one of the episodes?
Maybe.
But
might have been talking about Bogart.
Yes.
I think.
In Casablanca.
Yeah.
But what it means to be a real man. What does it mean? What does it mean to be a man during this era? But what does it mean to be a man during our era?
In my opinion, anytime I think about what kind of man do I want to be, or anyone says something like that, it's that abstract ideal of personhood. And to me, the ideal person that you want to be, a true good person, just means that you have to know what your principles are, know how to stick by them, know how to take care of the people that you care about. Fuck all gender roles, expectations, any of that. It's about unapologetically, but with empathy, living a full life.
I feel like Ted goes through that transformation in this film.
Completely. Towards the beginning, you said that a lot of this movie is a man and his career and what he has to sacrifice. But the brilliant thing about it is that it becomes a man who is so focused on his career that his family falls apart, into a man who is so focused on his family that he will do anything to... The career becomes the goal to protect his family, instead of the family is the thing that he has as a byproduct of having a good career and not being a loser. It's a total switch.
And I think that's what's missing. Whereas I feel like there is a mentality in this day and age where a lot of men feel like they need to get the career in order to get the girl and build a family. Maybe I feel this at some point, different points during the day.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating how, what you said. I completely agree with you. Like what it means to be a man. Like for me, it's really about like, do you stand on your principles? Do you look after the people you love? Are you a man of your word? Do you speak truth? At least that's what I aspire to be. I think it'll be different for different people. Obviously, depending on how people were brought up, their own experience, and how they see things. I don't think there's a one size fits all. But then, you see, when you go back to Ted, it's like during the custody battle, you don't want him to lose custody. And it's, for me, what I was thinking was, why does it have to be either or?
I know you don't want him to lose custody, but you also don't want her to not be able to see her kid.
Yeah. Is then no in between? Does it have to be one or the other?
That's what I mean when I say I wish someone had asked these parents, how do you want Billy to feel about you 5 years from now? Because then it just shifts the whole goal of the process.
There's a moment when whilst Ted is testifying, when Joe's lawyer goes to cross-examine him, and he's going after the job. Actually, first he goes after the injury.
Yeah. Did you not tell Miss Kramer that you felt like you were a failure?
And it's like, he just looks at Joe and is like, oh, you told him. Like something, you're using that against me. And you can feel the sorrow for him. Like in that moment, you're like, fuck, this is about to get nasty.
Yeah.
They're really going after you, painting you as a bad father. And then even the best moment during the cross-examination is when Joe's lawyer is going after his job and realizes, points out that he lost his job and had to get a new job. And Ted says, oh yeah, but I got a new job. But it's the shot of Joe in that moment she realizes, oh, he was willing to give up his career. He was willing to give up his career. Because she hasn't been around for 18 months.
Yeah.
This is the first indication that she's had that he's changed. And this is the brilliance of the fucking script, yo. It's the brilliance of the fucking script. And those little moments. See, it's those shots where you get the point of view of the other character and you see the insight into what they're thinking. And it works well. It's the director doing a good job, the cinematographer doing a good job, the actors doing a good job. Because it's all there. It's all there. You just have to mine it out. But obviously, Ted loses custody.
Yeah. She runs up to him after that testimony, before they have the final decision, and says that she didn't realize that her lawyer was going to use the injury thing against him.
And he doesn't say a single word.
No, he closes the classic old style New York elevator, literally putting himself in a cage, shutting himself away from her.
Do those still exist?
In some buildings, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they look cool.
Yeah.
They look cool.
And then it goes to him explaining the situation to Billy in a park once he knows that he's lost. And this is the scene that made me cry. When Billy starts crying. And this is the Ratatouille moment for me. And it's not like I even had a moment like this, but it was just all these feelings of like, I didn't get to have both my dad and my mom at the same time in that unit. I had to keep saying goodbye to them every week. Yeah, that it really got me, that moment. The kid's so good.
I have noticed throughout the 28 years of my life now that people who've had the unit together throughout their lives are completely different to people who haven't. The people who haven't have a, I don't want to say shell. I think they're all different. I think we're all different in different ways in terms of how we've handled it, because it links to how we allow people to enter our lives.
Yeah. I think people whose parents stayed together, even if their parents maybe shouldn't have stayed together, so it wasn't necessarily a good, healthy family, I still think that they've grown up with a consistency in their lives that we haven't. And in some people, it can appear as naivety. I don't think it is, but it's their perspective on things is just different.
Yeah. It is. And that's when you go to what's supposed to be the final day of Billy and Ted together and
making French toast
properly. You see them in sync.
Beautiful, tragic silence between them.
And you just see them sat down waiting for Joe, and the intercom rings. And obviously Ted is expecting Joe to come up, but Joe tells him to come down. And this is where Joe pretty much just says, yeah, I don't want to do it. When I first watched it, I was like, you're not leaving again, are you? Like, don't go through all this just to leave again.
Yeah. But no, she says she was thinking about Billy waking up in his room with all the clouds on the walls that she painted. Now she wishes that she had painted walls in her new apartment so that he would feel like he's home when he wakes up. But this is Billy's home. It's not even about Billy's home is with his dad. It's literally just this kid's world has been changed and uprooted so much to completely uproot him entirely from everything he's grown up with. Too much for a kid.
And this is where she goes up the elevator and Ted just says, no, you go ahead. And the shot that you hate.
I don't hate it. It's just not perfect.
You just see the elevator close on Joe.
Yeah.
And blackout. There is, in that moment where Joe realizes, accepts that what's best for Billy's to stay. Not necessarily with Ted, but just to stay at home. And even though you get the feeling that the relationship is irreparable, you also get the feeling that don't make it work.
Yeah.
Almost like how your parents made it work.
Mm. I feel I should say that yes, my parents were not together for my life. But I do consider myself very lucky in the fact that they handled it as well as they did, and they are incredibly close. It took them a little while, but they are very, very close. They're basically best friends still. They just can't live with each other and be in that relationship. But yeah, I feel very, very fortunate that I got to have basically as good a version of that situation that I think someone can have. If it had been different, I mean, like, I should go to therapy for multiple reasons anyway, but if it had been worse, then I would definitely be in a worse place right now. It's so important, no matter what, for the kid to just try to make things somewhat normal.
I can imagine what it's like for the kid, yes, but for a parent to make that decision. And I'm gonna guess it's for different people, it'll be for different reasons, but what it must be like to leave your kid, or to have your kid taken away from you.
Mm.
How you must, like, you said it before, how your dad must feel saying goodbye at the end of every weekend.
I mean, what you've talked about with your dad, it's such a huge decision. And as a kid, you know, you can take it one way, but when you think about him as a person doing that, that's unimaginable.
And that's why you just have to, you know, life is hard. And I understand, well, I'll speak for myself. I feel like 28 years has got me to a point where I'm desensitized to a lot of things that happen in the world.
Mm.
And obviously having your dad walk out on you adds to that. But there is a thing for showing compassion for old people. Because you never really know the decisions, how people come to the decisions that they make.
Mm-hmm.
You never really know the struggle that they're going through. And how sometimes it can be brewing for a while. And they try to make it work. Like Ted and Joe tried to make it work. But the only result is to sort of upend it all. On that note, I want to talk about one funny scene that happens in the film.
Sure.
Which is when Ted gets some sugar.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Marilyn Monroe because she's dead at this point.
No, Phyllis.
Phyllis. I love the shot where they've just slept together,
Mm-hmm.
and they're waking up, and she's going off to the bathroom, and she runs into Billy.
Yeah.
He doesn't even flinch. She's stark naked.
Yeah.
He doesn't even flinch. I was thinking about it. I was like, would 7-year-old me flinch? Or at least acknowledge that this is a naked person in front of me. I think I would. But for whatever reason, this kid is like, Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like chicken?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're just not going to acknowledge the naked lady. But I love that moment of levity. Because that also highlights the innocence
Yeah.
within Billy of like, he doesn't know what's going on. Like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever this is.
She's doing a terrible job at covering herself up, first of all.
Oh no, the first time she only covers her boobs, and
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I think you need to cover everything, love.
I get that this is an upper body shot, but both of your hands are up there.
I mean, at the end, I think they sort of realize like, oh, you're only covering the top part. You need to cover all of it.
Yeah.
Because it switches. Where at the end you sort of see a shot of her covering everything up. But yeah, it was just that moment of levity that I really appreciated. Anything else you want to get into?
Okay, I'll roll the decks a few little moments that I just liked, but then it's time for a little bit of shop talk to close things out. But yes, little bitty moments. At one point, Billy's making a joke, and he says, "What time is it when an elephant sits on your fence? Time to get a new fence." Great joke. Yes. I love it when she's first left and he's making the breakfast in the morning and he's just manic and monologuing to himself to try to keep his world on track. Butchering the toast, filling up the French press way too much with coffee. Later on, they're talking about sports. They're talking about the sports team, and Billy says, "I like the Red Sox, Boston Red Sox. Yeah, I like Boston. I like Boston because Mommy's from Boston." And Dustin just sort of takes that for a minute. After he's put away all the photos of her.
Oh, I know what you. Yeah.
He's tucking Billy into bed, and he just realizes that Billy's hidden one of these photos of his mom in his drawer.
Yeah.
And he, like a more obvious movie would be he gets mad about it and he throws the picture at the wall and it's a whole thing. But no, he realizes what that means and he puts it on Billy's dresser. Beautiful. When it's one of the first time jumps and we see Billy waking up and there's all these letters and postcards and things on his wall from his mom. And the first time I saw that, I was just like, okay, well, that's a lot of cards. That's a Halloween card. Oh, that's a Christmas card too. And from a certain point of view, it was like horrifying to me. All that time lost between them.
Yeah.
And it's good that she's living her life, but then, yeah, there is that aspect of like, wow, time has gone by. When you realize as an audience member how much time has really passed, it's like, Jesus. Yeah, the beautiful silent sequence when the kid wakes up, takes the shortest piss in the world.
Oh, I wanted to mention about the piss. They never flush.
It's true, they don't.
They never flush.
They never flush.
It's such a man thing to do, and
you just know that toilet seat has been staying up the whole time.
Oh my god, you can. I was just imagining it. Like no woman in the house. It's a young kid, a grown man, and they're not flushing. And I'm pretty sure that piss on the floor. I can hear it. I can hear that some of that piss is hitting the floor.
Yeah, some of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's early in the morning.
You need a woman in the house. You need a woman in the house.
They're having donuts for breakfast. They've got their routine worked out, but yeah, these are a couple dudes. The scene when Dustin asks Margaret to basically be Billy's godmother.
Oh yeah, right after the incident. Yeah.
Beautiful. I don't really have much more to say about that other than what a fantastic little scene. Yeah, that's most of those. Oh, when he gets the new job at the advertising firm, and then immediately sexually assaults someone. It's the 70s.
Oh yeah.
You can't do that anymore. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's just about everything I wanted to touch on there. Shop talk.
Okay.
Throwing the glass against the wall. Dustin Hoffman, of course, classic New York actor that doesn't really exist anymore. Method. Apparently he was improvising a lot of lines. Several people were cast as Joe, or offered the part before Meryl Streep, including Faye Dunaway, Jane Fonda, and Ally McGraw. Gail Strickland was the first person officially cast as Margaret, but she left after a week of filming because apparently she couldn't quickly memorize the improvised lines that Hoffman was working up, and they were moving very, very quickly. Her account is that she couldn't keep up with these lines. This annoyed Dustin Hoffman, and she was fired because of that. So yes, Dustin Hoffman is playing fast and loose with it, getting natural performance stuff. Like, you know, I think improvisation is okay to do in a lot of acting situations. But then, yeah, I think he's crossing a few lines. Smashing the glass against the wall. He only told the camera operator. Meryl Streep's reaction is very, very genuine. And I'm pretty sure it was a real glass. It's a great moment. You can tell that she really is pissed off, but like that is a dangerous thing to do. Glass shards flying everywhere. Could have hit her. Someone could have gotten hurt. Our fight choreography teacher would always say, your body and your face is your career. The people that you're working with, it is their career.
Which is why he moved it.
It's why he moved it, but still, you can use a breakaway glass that, if you smash against a wall, is not going to damage anyone if it hits them. But that's not what happened. He didn't tell anyone. He just smashed a real glass.
He told the camera operator.
But he didn't tell the director. He didn't tell the props people. He didn't tell Meryl. Like you.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate.
No, of course.
I find it interesting because when you hear that story, I'm just thinking, how did people react afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a case of like, oh yeah, good work, Justin? Or did people go, that was kind of fucked up? Because if Dustin is the big star,
he had the most cachet of anyone on set, for sure.
Then now you're just allowing him to do whatever the fuck he wants. I think it goes back to this. See, this whole method acting thing, right? I feel like it's been taken in such a direction where, and I blame Daniel Day-Lewis. I love Daniel Day-Lewis. There's some things I love about him. Mm-hmm. But some things I'm critical about him.
He has the most extreme, egregious case of method actor.
But the thing I sort of that I am critical of him is that he's somehow notorialized, if that's a word, method acting, and turned it into this thing where you have to stay into character, and that's what people think method. First of all, method acting really. We're talking about shop talk.
Mm-hmm.
We're going back to Stanislavski.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a method. By that logic, you're a method actor, I'm a method actor. Okay?
I think that's true. Meryl Streep is a method actor.
Okay?
Self-described.
It's all about having a process and going through the process. Mm-hmm. You don't just show up and... I know so many people on actors think that actors just learn their lines and just fucking say them. No. It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. A lot of time just thinking. It's a lot of thinking power. But at the end of it, it's not this whole staying into character. I feel like because Daniel Day-Lewis won these Oscars, a lot of actors go, I need to stay into character for the gold. That's how I'm going to get the gold.
Yeah.
Whereas it doesn't really change the performance. You either got it or you don't. And when I say got it, I'm not talking about talent. I'm talking about, did you understand the character?
Yes.
Did you do the homework? Did you spend time going through the script? If you have to do backstory, did you do that? I was watching something the other day where Heath Ledger's dad was going through his notebook for the Joker.
Yeah.
And you can see he was doing animal work. He was picking out specific lines, dissecting them.
Yep.
He was really going through the process of really breaking down this character and sort of building it up. But I do not like how we've gone to this point where people think method acting is staying into fucking character.
It's glamorized and it's seen as, oh, you're so cool and dedicated to it. Heath Ledger, there's this myth that Heath Ledger was in character as the Joker all the time on set. No, he was in makeup, but he was Heath Ledger.
There's literally behind the scenes footage of him joking around with Christian Bale.
Yeah. And not that kind of joking.
Yeah. It's not like he's walking around being like, call me the Joker.
Yeah, no.
Like, no, he did the work and he was just allowing it to just flow.
But then you hear about Daniel Day asking people to call him Lincoln all the time on set.
And see, that's his thing. If I was working with him, would I call him whatever character he was playing? No, I think I'll just avoid him.
Yeah, I would try to interact as little as possible with that.
Now, are there certain moments when you have to be in a certain headspace and you have to depending on what you're doing that day, you have to step away from everything and everybody? Yes.
Sure.
There's moments for that. We call that emotional prep. Okay? You have to do the emotional prep. Going back to Dustin. I was watching Rain Man, obviously. I don't know if he stayed in character for that one. To be honest, I don't even know if his thing was staying in character.
To an extent. Not like to a Daniel Day-Lewis level, but one of the most famous stories about him and about method acting in general is when he did the movie Marathon Man, and he was working with Laurence Olivier. And there's this torture sequence, and Dustin Hoffman apparently stayed awake for like 48 hours. He barely ate anything. He barely had anything to drink, so that he could look and feel very, very exhausted and tortured.
See, that's an extreme version of emotional prep.
Yes. On set when they were filming that, he was, a bit, he might have like complained a bit about how he was feeling. He wanted to get it done because he was obviously not feeling very well. And Laurence Olivier infamously said to him, "My dear boy, why don't you try acting?"
Which, you know what? Granted, I've not seen a single piece of Laurence Olivier's work.
Oh.
I've read about it.
Yeah.
I can get the gist of what type of actor he was. I don't know if he would be my kind of actor. I would have to watch.
Sure, yeah.
But there is... See, I sort of feel like the benefit of staying in character is that if you're on a film set and it's stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, stop, if you want to get into that flow state, and I think for some actors it's easier to enter the flow state than others. But if you want to get into that flow state, and for you, it's best to stay in character, fine. Okay, whatever.
Sure.
Whatever. But it's not necessarily the thing that you need in order to enter the flow state. Things like emotional prep. No, doing the fucking homework.
Just making notes in your script.
being fucking open to your fellow actors. And that, I think that's where it's sort of the scene with Dustin and Meryl. If he just goes to Meryl and be like, yeah, listen, I'm thinking about doing this thing. I think I'm just gonna smash the glass right next to you. You okay with that? I really doubt Meryl's gonna be like, no.
Yeah, they could have worked it out.
You could have worked it out.
It maybe wouldn't have been so raw and real,
but then
that's where she acts.
Yeah, it's instead of like surprise. It's almost like you talk about him kissing the woman.
Yeah,
you have to question. Well, was that planned? Was that in the script, or did he feel the impulse and just went with it?
From what I know, not that woman, but at the beginning when he walks in and she's about to leave him, he kisses her as he walks in the door. Apparently, she didn't know he was going to do that then.
See, I feel like in those moments, and it's people have different thoughts on it, because now we've got intimacy coordinators and stuff like that, and people have different thoughts on that. I have my own thoughts on that.
Yeah,
but I don't. I've worked with an intimacy coordinator once, and I didn't enjoy it. The only reason was because once we planned it out and it was set.
Yeah.
And that was the first session. By the second session, I'd already come up with new ideas, but I couldn't do them because we'd already agreed on something new. Now, for me, I could easily go, fuck what we agreed on. I'm gonna do what I want. But the way we've been trained, we have to care about the other actor. So I'm gonna stick to what we've agreed. Yeah. I'm gonna take my ego out of it and work with what we've got. But would I have loved to have the opportunity of like, okay, I want to try something different now? Yes. And I'll talk to my fellow actor.
Exactly.
Of which I did talk to my fellow actor. And she was up for it. She thought it was a good idea, but we just couldn't change it because the intimacy coordinator had already set the stage.
Yeah, that's...
And that's where I go, I don't really like that. It goes against everything that you're supposed to do as an actor. If I feel like I want to do something different, I should be allowed to do something different. I'll let the other people know.
Yeah.
And it's within the confines of what we've agreed on. But Dustin, and I think it's an old school mentality, and maybe it's the New York actor type of thing of like, fuck everybody type of thing. But it really doesn't change anything telling the other, your scene partner what you want to do.
No, if you trust your scene partner, then you should be able to trust that they can do their job. You don't have to surprise them to get a real performance out of them.
And the thing is, even the glass smashing, it's actually a great offer.
Yeah.
It's actually a great offer.
It works extremely well. But he didn't. There were ways to do that.
Yeah. And I see, and that's why I think the moral of the story is method acting isn't about staying into character. It's about doing the fucking work and doing the fucking work.
Yeah.
Do the fucking work. And that work involves different layers of things and things that will vary depending on the character that you're playing. I remember when I did Richard II. And in the script, because it's Shakespeare, it was mentioned that he's got palsy. And obviously, being the actors that we are, I had to find out what palsy was. Turns out he was crippled. He'd been to war. Well, I sort of added the backstory. He'd been to war. and it affected him. So what I would do is that whenever I entered the rehearsal room, because I had to have a cane, I would always use the cane. But I wouldn't go out of the rehearsal room with the fucking cane and walk around with the cane.
Talk about how much you spent in war.
No. I would just be in the rehearsal. I didn't even need to be in the scene. I would just walk around in the cane to get the feel of what feels right.
Yeah.
And I would play around with it, see the feel of it. Where does the weight hold? How can I... And every single time... What was starting to happen, and this is... You go back to the staying in character thing. Even just doing that, just doing it in the rehearsal room, I would shake.
Mm-hmm.
Because the character shaked. And I noticed one time when I was brushing my teeth, this was at home, brushing my teeth, my hand was starting to shake.
Mm.
But I wasn't doing it on purpose. And this is, you talk about John.
Yeah.
I remember him mentioning this, was like, the body doesn't know that you acted. It doesn't. So it's just going to remember what you did before. It doesn't care if you're acting or if you're not acting. What you did before, it'll remember. And this is where I kind of feel sorry for Daniel Day-Lewis. Because the impact of staying in those characters must be so... The toll of it, the cost of it.
Yeah. No wonder he's retired 3 times.
And Brian Cox talks about this with Jeremy Strong. Where it's like, you don't need to work that hard. Because there is a cost. And every single... I think when we did Time and Conway's, the J.B. Priestley play, that part hit me hard. Because really diving into it, there is something, and this is it's hard for non-actors to understand, but for actors, they'll get this. And then, I don't know if you've felt this yet, but the lines between you and the character, they start to blur. And because with that part, Ernest, and that's the thing, is that he was being ridiculed by all the other characters. And I remember making a joke. It was like the first couple of days we were reading through the play. And you've got, everyone ridiculing you. And I just made a joke. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to hate this by the end. And I did.
Huh.
Because it's every single time you're going through the play, everyone's just going at you. Everyone's insulting you. Yeah, we're acting. Yeah, we go home. But your body remembers. Your body remembers that feeling.
Yeah.
Your body takes that on board. Those feelings that rise up when you allow them to, they stay. And it's about learning how to separate the work from you.
Yeah.
Which is the most important thing.
One of the things John said towards the beginning of school was, don't draw on real emotional experiences. Don't draw on real things. Imagine things. Imagine how you would feel in a certain emotional state. Don't draw on real things, because you're mixing work with life, and that's not healthy. Apparently, Dustin Hoffman, Meryl Streep was engaged to the actor John Cazale, who died a few months before they were making this movie. And Dustin Hoffman said some very nasty negative things about him and their relationship or something to Meryl Streep to draw a more still fresh pain out of her.
See, I wouldn't do that. But what I would do, and I do this, doo-doo, is when I'm in the rehearsal room, I prefer, especially if I'm in the scene, I prefer to be in the point of view of the character.
Sure.
So how I'm responding is the point of view of the character, just so I can understand or take it on board, like how they would respond to situations.
Yeah.
But I would never sort of play on that because that's personal.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the work. And I mean, I haven't had the experience yet of being around that type of actor, and I sort of feel like that's the thing, is we go through our careers where you're going to work with actors with different processes of how they work, and even in our group, everyone had a different way of working. You know, you did have the people who stayed in character.
Yeah.
And then you'd have people who just let it fly.
Water off the duck's back.
And I'll probably say I'm probably in the middle.
Yeah.
Depending on what serves me best in the job. Because some jobs are different from others.
Yeah.
But it's just something you have to sort of...
It's a balance.
It's a balance.
For me, psychologically, again, I'm very good at compartmentalizing things because of various reasons. Psychologically, I don't stay in character like that at all. If we stop rehearsing a scene and I need to take direction or chat with someone, I'm completely in and out of it. But physically, things do stay with me. Every time I find a new physicality for a character, something new about that would stay with me. The last show that I did, I was playing one very, very tense character, and ever since then, I've had a little click in my jaw.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. The body doesn't think, oh, you're acting. No. It would be like, oh, that's what you got now? That's what you got now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you got now.
Which is why it's so important to find a healthy balance. If that sort of extreme method acting works for someone, more power to you, I guess, but you gotta find a way to stay healthy with it. For me, I think that it's how much effort are you putting in, and then how much are you getting out of that. And if the input is less than the output, then maybe you should re-examine things. And definitely don't do that to other people you're working with.
See, that's where, like Gene Hackman, for example.
Yeah.
You watch his work, and he's so relaxed. My favorite actors are the ones who are relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, how the fuck are they doing that? They're so relaxed, and yet you completely believe... You could not tell the difference between Gene Hackman and the character he's playing. And you just go, oh, he's that character.
Yeah.
And there's something about relaxation, which is another thing that Stanislavski talks about the importance of relaxation. You cannot have too much tension. I do not like watching an actor work.
Effort is not attractive.
It's not. You have to make it seem easy.
Yeah.
And that because humans, people, aren't trying to be anything. They just are. And just being requires you to just relax into it. Whatever physicality you have for the character, you have to relax into it. Obviously, if you're playing a character that has a certain level of tension, you have to bring that, but it has to be intentional. Yeah. The tension has to be intentional. You shouldn't just have tension.
No.
And maybe I'll change my mind in a few years when my process develops even further. But yeah, that was acting class.
Yeah.
Which one, Max?
I just wanted to, because there's some infamous stories from behind the scenes of this movie. I just wanted to unpack that a little bit. This episode, we're at 2 hours and 35 minutes.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I feel like we can wrap it up. If there's anything else you want to...
No, that's all. My God, if you've listened to this full episode, well done. But yeah. Moral of the story is show compassion to people.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know why they make the decisions they make. And yeah, take care. Look after yourselves. I've been Tawana.
I'm Max.
We'll see you next time. Oh, you'll hear us next time.
Yeah. Peace.